Hello, hello, I am Sinner, and I am back with another episode of Leviathan Times. This is a series where I sort of off the cuff explain an article I wrote on Substack and make the same points but in a more like casual lecture style way. This is episode 6. Um, it's on politics serves established elites, not us. Now this is sort of a middle way between like the position that Samuel T. Francis had. I express how I feel about what the elite is in our society, and I basically say, and this is the truth, that you have in every democratic society, you have like an entrenched bureaucracy, an entrenched managerial class that sits just below the uh, the elected elites, the politicians, and they actually make the majority of the policy plans and political decisions compared to the politicians themselves. And this is mainly just from the fact that, if in Australia especially, most politicians go to law school and then go straight into being a career politician. They never actually really know much about policy or statecraft or any of these sorts of things. So a lot of it just ends up being sort of kicked down the ladder, which ends up meaning that all the policy decisions are made by the managerial class, let's say. And then the thing is that is like there's also a sort of oligarchy in our economic life in the sense that the majority of companies um, don't have like there's not an equal say between companies, if that makes sense. There's a minority of big corporations that have disproportionate political power and disproportionate say in parliament due to lobbying. So, what this means fundamentally for like our political life is that there's sort of two elite classes. There's the economic elite and the managerial elite. And the managerial elite controls the bureaucracy of our day-to-day life, and the economic elite controls our economy, basically. And these two can actually work symbiotically. And this is something that a lot of people don't really understand. It's a common position that's like argued by Hoppians, which is that a lot of the regulation that we see in modern society is not actually regulation that stops or slows down the capacity of the big corporations and the entrenched like corporate class. Rather, it's regulations that slow down or stop people from entering into businesses, slow down people from basically competing with the companies that already exist. So if you have a company that's, uh, let's say, making ketchup, right? If you then lobby the government to make really hyper specific, really hard to follow laws on creating ketchup, and you're the only one that coincidentally follows all those laws, then you're already at like a massive advantage. And there's sort of with the political class and the economic class, everyone knows the managerial elite, the economic elite, everyone knows about the revolving door by now, right? The fact that people who are at the upper echelon of economic life, CEOs and CFOs or COOs, will often end up in politics, um, or vice versa. You'll have people who, for example, one of our previous premiers in Western Australia, um, he was a Labor premier. His name was Mark McGowan. He now works as a board member for like 5 different mining companies and has a bunch of stocks and is now a gajillionaire because he what would have happened was he did favors for private companies while he was in government, and now they're doing favors for him. So they sort of protect each other and ensure each other have wealth and power and maintain the status quo. They help each other maintain the status quo because it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Now, what this means for political discourse is that often everything is framed in such a way that benefits the economic elite and the managerial elite. So we can only get taxes for the working class. We can only get regulation for the working class if we push for that, right? And um, everything sort of fits nicely into their paradigm. And I'll give you an example, which is immigration in Western countries. So, uh, to explain, like every in Anglo countries like America, Australia, and Great Britain, you have like the Republicans, the Conservatives, and the Liberal National Coalition, right? So they're socially conservative but economically liberal, right? So social conservatism would push for less immigration, keeping society more homogenous. But economic liberalism would push for more immigration because it makes the rich richer and boosts the economy. And contrarily, if you look at the left in these countries, the Democrats and Labour for UK and Australia, it's a sort of the inverse, right? So economically, they'd be anti-immigration because immigration hurts the working class by the laws of supply and demand. Obviously, if there's a stagnant or relatively similar amount of jobs and you dramatically increase the labor force, then the wages will go down, um, obviously. But culturally, they're pro-immigration and they're pro because of their multicultural position. So what this means is that every time the issue of immigration is brought up in a Western country, everyone automatically defaults to pro-immigration because that's the position that helps the corporate class, right? Another example would be like, you know, government intervention in the economy, generally speaking. Like corporations and governments are always like anti-communism, anti-socialism, pro-free market, except when a company like a big corporation uh, is being extremely financially irresponsible. And then all of a sudden the government bails them out. And it's like, oh, I thought you were pro free market. I thought you were anti government intervention in the market. It's like, well, we'll intervene to help our buddies who pay for everything, who pay for my Lamborghini and all this sort of stuff. But, everyone else, if you'll go under, it's free market economics, baby. So this is sort of the contradiction. And this has led to like really weird things that have occurred in like Western politics. A basic example is the fact that, while the ICE raids were happening a lot last year, I wrote this article last year, so it's a bit outdated. While the ICE raids were happening, there was a farm and in California, and I think there was also a factory in California where there were ICE raids, and Antifa fought the ICE agents, right? So Antifa was protecting the material interests of capitalists because they were like pro ethnic minorities, like pro multiculturalism. It's like, hold on, I thought you were a socialist. These guys are taking away wage slaves, and you're like, no, no, the capitalists need those wage slaves there. We're gonna fight ICE. And then like you see the exact same thing. This is aged really well, by the way. I wrote this last year, so I feel pretty vindicated. Um, I wrote, I'm going to just quote what I said. Similarly, the MAGA movement, self-styled as quote unquote America first, um, and anti-war, has ended up cheerleading Israel's war against the Palestinians escalating hostilities with Iran, and failing to end the conflict in Ukraine. So how is this the case? Well, how is it that this America first, anti-globalism, pro-American working class, movement has all of a sudden ended up being like the pro-globalism corporate elite, pro-Zionist position? Like, how does that make any sense? Well, it's because the structure of our the American, in this case, the American government leans towards these positions because the all the entrenched elites hold those positions. So even if you get a guy in, he'll turn. And I feel like I'm pretty vindicated in that because now, obviously, in the big 2026, Trump started a war in Iran. They didn't just escalate hostilities. So yeah, and it's true. When push comes to shove, even populist movements fold neatly into the priorities of the managerial and economic elite. Absolute vindication. Absolute vindication. Um, yeah, time after time, movements on both sides manage to defend the status quo when it matters most. They consistently undermine the working class while bolstering those already in power. The rhetoric changes, the outcomes do not. For this reason, I say remain skeptical. And that's what I'll end this on. Everyone should really remain totally skeptical of every political movement that um, is pushing anything at all. Always watch to make sure that they don't get in bed with the elites, the current elites. If you want a societal change, you need counter elites to take the place of our current elites. You can't have this system where, you know, change will happen by getting the current elites to do something that they don't want to do. It's never going to work. Um, so yeah, stay skeptical. And I called it. I called it. Oh my goodness, I'm a genius. Nah, just kidding. But yeah, that's all. I'm Senna. Thank you for watching. Um, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.